More of the same against the Edmonton Oilers as the Wild complete the season sweep over Edmonton with a 5-1 win. We recap the game, look at more brilliance from Kevin Fiala, plus a stick tap for the Minnesota Timberwolves as they lock up the 7 seed. All that and more today on Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, Minnesota sports fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen every day. And just as a reminder, Locked on Wild is free and available wherever you listen to podcasts. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, we recap a 5-1 win over the Edmonton Oilers, in which the Wild scored early and held on to win late. We'll take a look at how things are set up for the upcoming road trip, and we'll give some major props to the Minnesota Timberwolves after a huge win in the play-in game against the Los Angeles Clippers to secure them the 7 seed in the NBA playoffs. My name is Seth Topal, host of Locked on Wild, your veteran captain of the show with well over a decade's worth of experience covering your favorite Minnesota sports teams through their ups and their downs, and now here hosting Locked on Wild. Happy to have you along for a Wednesday edition of the show. Another win to talk about as the Minnesota Wild got it done against the Edmonton Oilers, and as has been the case, and I don't know that you'll find, maybe you will, I don't know that you'll find another playoff contender that the Wild have so thoroughly throttled this season than the Edmonton Oilers. 4-1, 7-3, 5-1. The scores of those games, and it was more of the same that we saw against Edmonton that we saw in the last couple of games. The Wild get out to hot starts, early leads, take advantage of some bad defense, bad goaltending combinations, and end up shutting down two of the best players in the NHL in doing so. And so we talk about the likes of St. Louis, Nashville, maybe Dallas, having the book on the Minnesota Wild. Well, rest assured, the Minnesota Wild have the book on the Edmonton Oilers. And it was a fun game to watch. A Wild team that is continuing to try to get themselves closer to full strength with Matt Dumba and John Merrill and Nick Delorier out of the lineup. A Wild team that also lost Jordan Greenway during the game. We'll give you an update on his status if we can track one down here before the show is done today. And so you look at which is most impressive for this Minnesota Wild team. Is it the fact that they were able to hold Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl to one goal over the course of the 3 games that they played? Is it the fact that the Wild were able to handle their business in all 3 of the games? Or is it the fact that we had yet another example of why Kevin Fiala needs to be the offseason priority for this team moving forward? Fiala with 2 more goals in the game against Edmonton had the crazy, just ridiculous angle on his second goal that gave the Wild, further padded their lead. And you look at it now, Fiala is at 26 goals, 39 assists on the season. He is projected for 74 points, but now 30 goals and 44 assists. And I'll throw a stat at you. Went ahead and tabulated the win-loss record for the Minnesota Wild in games in which Kevin Fiala has a point, registers a single point or more in the game. And it was relatively easy to do because he's played every game this season, and that continued in last night's game. But the record for the Wild in games in which Fiala scores a point, now 31, 10, and 5 on the season. So 31 and 16 essentially on the season are the Wild when Fiala scores. When he doesn't score, the Wilds are 14, 11, and 1. So still above 500 without him in the lineup, but not by much. And obviously a much better team when Fiala plays. And he just continues to further push what has made this team so successful here over the last few weeks. A second very elite scoring line with Matt Boldy and Freddie Gaudreau, and Gaudreau scoring against the Oilers too. This team is it's on a completely different level when they have those two scoring lines up on top. Now, with Matt Dumba out of the lineup, the numbers are very interesting as well. And I know we've talked about this this topic at length, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much. But the Wild are 38, 13, and 5 with Dumba in the lineup. They're now 6, 8, and 1 with him out of the lineup. So you got Fiala, who plays and is continuing to do some great things. He played on the penalty kill for the Wild, continues to do that, continues to make strides on both sides of the puck, and just is becoming just this phenomenal player right before our eyes. So please, offseason priority, get Fiala signed. There will have to be some moves made to accommodate that, but I'm fully on board. I'm fully okay with that, and just ready for that to finally happen. So Fiala was very good. Ryan Hartman, with his 2 goals, scored against the Oilers. Bad rebound control right out in front of the net by the Oilers. Koskinen not able to control a rebound, and so Hartman just takes the puck and just pushes it past him for his 2 goals. You get Freddie Gaudreau with the goal. The Wild's penalty kill does a pretty good job, with the exception of the Leon Draisaitl power play goal, which Draisaitl's going to get him. Not super worried about that. But it just, all in all, it was just a nice, comfortable win for this team. And at XL Energy Center, you'll take all of those that you can get. And, the hope is that this will be another reminder for the Wild, the kind of team that they can be, heading out on this road trip, which will feature Dallas and St. Louis. Be nice to get this next road trip off to a good start, much like the last one started off. So all in all, a good win for last night. But, it's just, last night's game was another further reminder as to the brilliance of Jonas Brodin and Jared Spurgeon. And so we'll dive a little further into that notion with just the job that was done against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. So we'll continue to recap last night's game with more here on Locked On Wild after this. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. You can skip the trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. You can get farm fresh seasonal produce and easy to make recipes delivered right to your door each and every week. You can pick your favorites from 50 different weekly options and skip weeks when you need to, change your delivery rate, or update your preferences, all on the HelloFresh app. So head to HelloFresh.com/LockedOn16 and use LockedOn16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. Again, head to HelloFresh.com/LockedOn16 and use the code LockedOn16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. You can also get that and plenty more at HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Continuing today's episode of Locked On Wilds, and again, thank you for making Locked On Wilds your first listen each and every day. Once your first listen of the day is done, make sure you head over to the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota to get the lowdown on all of your favorite Minnesota sports teams with Ron, plus some great guests that he has on. The Ron Johnson Show, all part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts. Can we talk enough about just how good Jared Spurgeon and Jonas Brodin are for this Minnesota Wild team? Blanked Connor McDavid again. It's becoming a regular occurrence for Jonas Brodin and for Jared Spurgeon to just frustrate those two, Draisaitl included, to just frustrate them into oblivion. And you look at this defense for the Wild in this game. Now, I was hypercritical again of the Jordy Ben, Alex Goligoski D pairing, and they did fine. I mean, Ben was Ben at this point, but there were really no plays or very few plays in which you look and you said, "Yep, that could have directly led to a goal." But because I think we're seeing as the season rolls on, we're seeing just how good the Spurgeon Middleton pairing is for this team as that top line of your decor. And you look at with Matt Dumba not in the lineup, you've had Brodin rotating with Kulikov and Goligoski to get try to get some different looks for Jonas Brodin. Brodin, able to cover more ground in that D pairing, and you see with Middleton, with him being more defense oriented, that allows Jared Spurgeon to do some other things and kind of free him up to not have to be the one always pulled back on the play. And when John Merrill gets back from injury, which hopefully will be soon, sounds like he participated in the optional skate before the Oilers game. So hopefully he will be able to participate on the road trip, but as of now, still out. But when he gets back into the lineup, just that good offense-oriented defenseman who can step up and help once the Wilds get the puck into the opponent's offensive zone. Then his D partner can kind of stay back and focus more on the defensive side. So it's been a good mix, albeit one where we're can take Dumba and Merrill back at any time. But we talked about it in the postcast of last night's game, in that you look at the things that Brodin does and just hounds players to prevent them from doing anything with the puck first and foremost, to even getting the puck half the time and being able to. The Oilers had a couple of great 2-on-1 opportunities, and who was there backing things up and preventing clean shot opportunities off of odd man rushes? Jared Spurgeon. And so, you've got those two guys leading this defense core. You've got the Middleton acquisition. It certainly seems as though the defense has started to round back into form. And then you top it all off with a very strong game from Cam Talbot, who continues to just be lights out here over his last several games. Month of April, In 3 games, he's 2-0-1, 2.47 goals against average and a .927 save percentage. But the one gripe I have, and in March too, went 8-1-1 and had a goals against average of 2.48 and a save percentage of .914. Can we stop with the shutouts that are broken midway through the third period or with 4 minutes left to play in the game? Can we get one? I know there have been a couple, but can we just get even half of those instances in which the opponent for the Wild scores a goal late? Can we just eliminate half of those out of the picture? It just be great. But Talbot was great, and it makes it easier to point to some of these bad outings that him, Marc-Andre Fleury have had as more anomalies as opposed to the trend as we move further into the season. So glad to see that as well. Glad to also see another Minnesota sports team come up with a huge win to start off the playoff push here in Minnesota. So we'll talk about the Timberwolves night and draw some comparisons between Anthony Edwards and one Kirill Kaprizov to finish today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. The month of April brings a lot of showers, but it also brings you a great opportunity to eat better and get yourself in the right shape with Built Bar. And if you have not yet tried the Built Bar Puffs, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. As with other Built Bars, Puffs contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. You can compare that to your standard candy bar with around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. If you want to get in on the Built Bar Mania, head to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off of your order. Again, use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. We are going to venture into a different aisle of the toy department, as Dan Barrero would say. The Minnesota Timberwolves had their play-in game against the Los Angeles Clippers last night, and it was such a compelling game to watch, such a just insanely chaotic game. You have one of your best players, Karl-Anthony Towns, fouling out. You have a first quarter that took, an insane amount of time to finish because there were so many fouls getting called. Patrick Beverley had 3 of them in the first quarter, and yet the Timberwolves rise up from all of that adversity and are able to come away with a just massive win against the way more playoff experienced Los Angeles Clippers. And you know what? I had a few thoughts that popped into my head while watching the game. The first thought was just how amazing it was to see a team do what the Minnesota Wild have been doing basically all season, is completing, these crazy comebacks, overcoming massive amounts of adversity, and finding improbable ways to pick up wins. And you look this Wolves team, they were in some dire straits in this game against the Clippers. The Clippers had like a 7-point, 8-point lead at multiple points. And so the team, because of how tightly knit they are as a group, which again, another similarity to the Minnesota Wild's clubhouse atmosphere and clubhouse chemistry definitely matter. you see that chemistry that this group has and the belief that they're not out of any game at any given point. And the fact that you can lose one of your best players with a large chunk of time left and have one of your other superstars, a young, budding superstar, step up and absolutely take over was just a great parallel as to the way the Wild have been getting it done all season. I mean, how many times have the Wild faced multiple goal deficits this year, found ways to come back and to get it done? And on one night, it might be Ryan Hartman. On another night, it might be Kevin Fiala. On another night, it might be Kirill Kaprizov. Having a bunch of guys that are capable of rising to the occasion in the big moments. And D'Angelo Russell, one of the guys for the Wolves that stepped up when the spotlight was the brightest. But Anthony Edwards gave us a very compelling Kirill Kaprizov impression by taking that game over down the stretch. And you look at these two teams that play in basically the same time, so there is a lot of overlap between the two. A lot of similarities as to how things get done. A hugely high flying, high octane offense for the Timberwolves. Minnesota Wild also a just juggernaut offense that they have put together. You've got the Anthony Edwards, Kirill Kaprizov comparison as your young superstar players that just have the knack to be able to step up and get it done in big moments and tell the team, it's okay. I got this. I'm going to make sure that we get this done, get this win. And I think the other thing that that gives these two teams such a close feel is having the right coach to be able to push the right buttons, to be able to make the right decisions, to be able to scheme up the roster enough to be competitive and to be able to win games more often than you lose them. And so Chris Finch does his Dean Evison impression. And it is just, it's almost a little eerie to me just how similar these two teams are. The Timberwolves obviously a little lower in the standings in an absolutely loaded Western Conference. Minnesota Wilds are, near the top of the standings in the West with some absolutely top-heavy teams in front of them and a stacked Eastern Conference playoff push. But the point that I wanted to make in summarizing all of this is that the Timberwolves and the Wild as well, for as long as Anthony Edwards and Kirill Kaprizov are here in Minnesota, they will never be out of a game because you have generational talents that are capable of taking a game over. Anthony Edwards did that against the Clippers, and the Wolves ended up winning. So now they'll advance to the actual playoffs. Kirill Kaprizov has done that numerous times already in his young NHL career. And so neither of these two teams can ever really be considered mathematically out because they have players capable of pulling the craziest comebacks, absolutely like scorching hot performances in the big games. And of any of the, young superstars that have dotted the lineup here in the Minnesota sports scene, probably two of the most likely to break the championship drought in Anthony Edwards and Kirill Kaprizov. Now, Randy Moss would have been probably my other answer. And, maybe young player for the Twins, Joe Mauer, maybe. or, any young player. Kirby Puckett, ironically, was on the Twins the last time any team in this town won a title. Young athletes that can take over games when your team is not playing well or when other circumstances are dictating how the game is played. Young superstars that can take over the game are complete game changers. We got 2 of them right here in Minnesota. We got 3 of them here in Minnesota. Add Justin Jefferson to the mix. So the future, I think it's safe to say, is bright here in Minnesota with these 3 guys kind of leading the charge and hoping that the success continues to follow as it has, because now we're halfway there in the calendar year. Wild, very likely to make the playoffs. Haven't officially clinched yet, but it's coming. Timberwolves in as well. Now it's just up to the Vikings and the Twins to complete that quadfecta and somebody to win that title. But it's so fun to watch Kaprizov and Edwards do their things. And so congratulations to the Minnesota Timberwolves. For more on that win and to preview the series coming up against the Memphis Grizzlies, you're going to want to make sure that you have Locked On Timberwolves locked and loaded as Ben Beacon navigates you through the lead up to the playoffs and the execution of them as well. And that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Wild. So now that your first listen of the day is done, again, head over to any of the Locked On Sports Minnesota shows, any of our Locked On Wild, Timberwolves, Twins, Vikings, Golden Gophers, any of those. Make sure to give them a follow as well. And make sure to check out all the great things we have coming up at Locked On Sports Minnesota. Make sure you're also following Locked On Wild wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow us on social media as well to stay up to date on your favorite Minnesota sports team. Anytime there's big news, anytime there's anybody fight, or anytime there is a major transaction, Locked On Wild has you covered with new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.